By the time her plane took off, the locks were already changed. Deadbolt, handle, and the little chain she always forgot to use. She was texting me sweet nothings from gate 23B, sending selfies with her friends like I hadn't already emptied half her closet and moved her plants into the garage. I even watered them. Isn't that pathetic? This wasn't revenge. I'm not bold enough for that. This was something smaller, quieter, a form of emotional arson with a fire too slow to notice at first. She left for her bachelorette trip that morning, all lavender perfume and fake excitement, and I acted the part. Hugged her too long, whispered, "I love you," into her hair like I hadn't already mailed a copy of the letter to her mother. That's right. I sent it to her mom. The letter wasn't angry. It wasn't even dramatic. I wrote it the way you write a grocery list. Hotel confirmation for 2 in Detroit. Suspicious Venmo charge labeled just tacos, smiley face. Deleted texts with someone saved as M. A birth control refill 2 months after she said she stopped. And then a single question. How long has your daughter been practicing her goodbye? I should have known something was wrong when she started folding her laundry. She's never done that in 6 years. She leaves it on the chair. You know the one. Every couple has the laundry chair. Then she began folding everything, smoothing the wrinkles, rolling her socks like we were in the army. That's not organization. That's guilt. People clean when they feel dirty. That's psychology, not paranoia. And the more she folded, the more I unfolded. I went through our shared bank app. Nothing major. She's not careless. But I saw it. $61 at a Mediterranean place we've never been to. Dinner for 2. At 10:47 p.m. I Googled the restaurant. It closes at 9. So what's open at 10:47? Hotel bars. That's what. I knew I had to wait. That's the hardest part. People think betrayal feels like getting stabbed. It doesn't. It's more like a cavity. Slow. Internal. The pain only shows when you tap the right nerve. And the nerve was her last trip as a free woman. For days in Phoenix. All girls. No boys. No guilt. I smiled. I offered to drive her to the airport. I packed her gum. I kissed her goodbye. She had no idea she'd kissed a man who had already packed up her desk, canceled the catering, and moved their wedding date in Google Calendar from happiest day of my life to canceled. Don't ask. When she lands, the door won't open. The key won't turn. And my phone will already be blocked. Because sometimes the best way to say, I know, is to be gone before the other person realizes you were ever there. She landed 2 hours ago. I know because I watched the flight tracker the way other people watch football, refreshing every few minutes, breath caught in my chest, waiting for that moment when the screen changes from en route to landed. She texted at 3:11 p.m. Touchdown. So hot here, LOL. We're heading to the Airbnb. Woman dancing, talk later, babe, Red Heart. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to play games. No, I'm not clever like that. I just didn't trust myself to say anything that wouldn't tremble with the weight of everything I hadn't said yet. Words were dangerous now. Silence felt safer. The apartment was still quiet. I'd turned the music off. My bag was packed, but I wasn't leaving yet. Not until I saw it for myself. The last breadcrumb. The final detail that would either break me or free me. It was sitting right there, hiding in plain sight. Her iPad. She always left it plugged in near the couch. Mostly used it for Pinterest and watching makeup tutorials. I never touched it. Ever. We had unspoken rules like that. But the problem is, people who break the big rules almost always leave the small ones untouched, like they're hoping it balances out. So I broke one of my own. I opened it. The Messages app wasn't password protected. Why would it be? She assumed I'd never look. And she was mostly right. Until now. There it was. A group chat labeled Desert Wives Fire Ring Cocktail Glass. 8 people. Mostly her bridesmaids. A few friends I didn't know well. And one number not saved to her contacts. Just a plain phone number with no name. At first, I scrolled through mindlessly, half expecting nothing but logistics. Where are we meeting? Who's bringing snacks? Do we need floaties for the pool? Then it shifted. One of the girls sent a picture of a shirtless guy holding a tray of tequila shots, captioned, "Meet tonight's entertainment, smiling face with horns." That wasn't what stopped me. What stopped me was what June sent in response. LMAO, I'm not allowed to get caught again, grinning face with sweat. Y'all promised me no cameras this time. Again? Again. I froze. The kind of stillness where your body forgets how to breathe. I scrolled further. Faster. My fingers started sweating. My jaw clenched so tight, I thought my molars might crack. Screenshots, DMs, deleted threads from her phone, still intact on the iPad. There was a guy, same initials as the M I'd seen earlier. They'd been talking for months, meeting at hotels during painting retreats. She even had a nickname for him, Ashtray. I don't know why. I don't want to know why. He called her my little storm. She said he made her feel real again. And worst of all, she told him she was marrying me because it's easy now. Because he's safe and tired, and he won't ask questions anymore. I sat there on the couch, surrounded by folded laundry and candles I'd lit when I thought she was the one. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even delete the messages. I just took photos of every screen, every message, every thread. Evidence. Not for revenge. For clarity. For sanity. I checked the calendar. The wedding was in 11 days. I didn't cancel anything. Not yet. That would be too easy. Instead, I opened a blank document on my laptop, titled it, A Reading from the Groom, and I started writing. Because if she wanted a performance, I could give her one. 3 days. That's how long it took me to finish the speech. Not because it was long, it wasn't, but because every word had to feel like a scalpel. I rewrote it 12 times, printed it out, burned it, started again. I wasn't trying to be poetic. I was trying to be precise. Every night while she was gone, I rehearsed it in front of the mirror like a lunatic, practiced my tone, adjusted the pauses, imagined her face as each sentence landed like a fist she never saw coming. It wasn't revenge, at least not the screaming, chair-throwing kind. It was theater, and like all good theater, it had to be quiet before the storm. She texted less and less as the trip went on. Day 1, I got a stream of Miss US and a video of a pool float shaped like a pizza slice. Day 2, just a meme and a good night. Day 3, nothing. Just a story she posted of a candlelit dinner on a rooftop, for wine glasses, but only 2 plates. I didn't ask. I didn't need to. By the time she came back, I was ready. She walked in like nothing was wrong, kicked off her shoes by the door, dumped her suitcase halfway open, and stretched like she'd just returned from a yoga retreat instead of a weekend betrayal. I watched her move around the apartment, the way she unpacked in slow motion, humming something off-key, checking her phone like she hadn't just spent 3 nights erasing every piece of herself she didn't want me to see. I asked her how the trip was. She gave me the usual answer. So good. Exhausting. I missed you. She kissed my cheek. I turned away just slightly, not enough to be obvious, just enough to keep her guessing. And then I asked the question that changed the temperature of the room in an instant. So who's M? She blinked. That was it. Just a blink. But that 1 second stretched into a canyon of silence I'll never forget. Her hands paused midair as she held her makeup bag, and I could see her weighing 10 different lies in her head at once. Sorry, she said. I didn't answer. I just walked out of the room, sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and turned it toward her. The iPad messages, the DMs, the hotel receipt, the photo she took of her feet on the hotel bed that she thought was artistic, but was actually evidence. My evidence. My quiet, brutal proof. She didn't speak for a full minute. Then she sat down slowly, like her legs forgot how to support her. What followed wasn't explosive. That's what surprised me. No screaming. No, it's not what it looks like. Just quiet pleading. The kind of begging that's soaked in shame, not fear. She started with apologies, then explanations, then tears, then more silence. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt. She spun a story about being lost, being scared of commitment, not feeling alive, whatever that means. She said she loved me, but also hated herself. That it wasn't about him, it was about her. All the usual poetic nonsense people pull from Instagram therapy accounts when they get caught. And then, once she'd run out of words, she asked the only one that mattered. Are we still getting married? I stood up, walked over to the table, picked up a sealed envelope and handed it to her. This is my answer. Inside was my speech. Not for her. For the wedding. For the audience. She opened it slowly. I watched her eyes move across the page. At first confused. Then horrified. Then, most painful of all, flat. Numb. Like she knew this ending was always written, even if she'd hoped for a rewrite. The final line read, "This is not a ceremony. This is a confession. And I'm not the one who needs forgiveness." She didn't say anything after that. Just folded the paper, put it back in the envelope, and left the room. I don't know if she cried. I don't care anymore. I just sat back down, opened a new tab, and ordered a black suit. Not for a wedding, but for a funeral. Not hers. Mine. The death of whatever man I used to be, before I let someone convince me I was hard to love unless I earned it by being blind. I don't know what it says about me that I still showed up. Maybe it's cowardice. Maybe some twisted sense of duty. Or maybe I just wanted to look her in the eyes one last time. Not the June I proposed to, but the version of her that returned from that trip, drained, rehearsed, rearranged. She hadn't brought up the letter since reading it. No fights, no ultimatums. Just an unsettling quiet that sat in the apartment like thick fog. We moved through it like ghosts. She still made tea in the mornings. Still folded towels in thirds, not halves. Still kissed my forehead, not my mouth. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I stood in the mirror buttoning the same dress shirt I wore to my uncle's funeral 2 years ago. It felt fitting. Everything about the evening felt more like a eulogy than a celebration. The venue was some overpriced rustic winery June's aunt had picked because it looked romantic at sunset. It did, I'll admit. Exposed beams, long oak tables, fairy lights strung like spiderwebs across the ceiling. People smiled and clinked glasses. No one noticed my hands trembling under the tablecloth. She walked in late, of course, with a grace that made it look intentional. Her hair curled like she hadn't just spent the day trying to ignore the weight of what she'd done. Her makeup sharp, eyes brighter than they had any right to be. You'd never know that the woman sliding into the seat next to me had rewritten her vows twice that morning. I know because I found the crumpled drafts in the bathroom trash. Her mother tapped a glass with a spoon. That polite chime that means, time for speeches. Time to pretend. I had told myself I wasn't going to say anything. That I'd just sit through it like a stone, then disappear before the final toast. But when her father stood and started describing a love that stood the test of time, I felt something burn inside me. A kind of rage I'd never known before. Not hot, not loud, but slow, like coal heat. Controlled. I waited until he finished, then stood. People turned. Chairs shifted. I raised my glass, and everyone followed. I didn't look at her. I want to say something quick, I began. About choices. Someone chuckled, probably thinking I was going to roast myself for proposing too late or missing signs early on. They didn't know. That's the best part. They were all still playing house, still locked in the delusion. All of them blind. We talk a lot about fate, I said, and timing and destiny. All those romantic words that make bad decisions sound like good stories. The room felt quieter than I expected. It was working. They were listening. But I've come to believe that love isn't about fate at all. It's about choices. Thousands of them. Big ones. Small ones. Quiet ones when no one's looking. Especially those. I felt her eyes on me now. A small twitch in her jaw. She knew where this was going. I kept going. And sometimes, the person you love makes choices they can't undo. And that's okay. Because the people who get hurt by those choices, they get to make decisions too. I took a breath. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigeration system behind the bar. Someone coughed. A fork clinked on a plate. I've made mine. I finished and drank. It wasn't explosive. No yelling. No reveal. Just truth disguised as poetry. The kind that makes you wonder and doubt and slowly put your glass down without ever understanding why your hands are shaking. She didn't say a word to me the rest of the night. But I saw her slip away into the hallway behind the kitchen. And I saw her wipe her eyes with the back of her hand like she didn't want to ruin her mascara. She came back out 20 minutes later like nothing had happened. And no one noticed the red in her eyes but me. I smiled through dessert. I laughed when her sister told the story of how we once burned pasta on our third date. I even hugged her father on the way out. Because now, there were only 2 nights left. And when the wedding came, I wouldn't stop it. No, I'd let it happen. But not the way anyone expected. Weddings are strange things when you already know they're a lie. That morning I woke up before my alarm. No cold feet, no dramatic pacing, no last-minute text to a friend asking if I was doing the right thing. Just silence. The kind of silence that sinks into your bones and doesn't let go. I showered, shaved, put on the suit. Not the one I bought when we first got engaged. I donated that one 2 weeks ago. This suit was darker, simpler, a rental. Like I didn't want to carry any of this home with me afterward. The ceremony was held at a vineyard an hour outside the city. One of those places that looked like a movie set. Arched wooden doors, white chairs in perfect rows, flowers prearranged to look accidentally perfect. The guests started arriving in waves, each one smiling, hugging, oblivious. They came to see a promise, a performance. They had no idea they'd get both. I stood near the altar, pretending to fix my cuffs while my mind played through every step of what I was about to do. My best man, Tyler, leaned over at one point and whispered, "You good?" I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Then the music started. Everyone stood. And there she was, June, walking down the aisle like the world hadn't fractured between us. Like she hadn't told another man he made her feel alive. Like she hadn't erased my name from the part of her heart I thought was sacred. She smiled at the guests, at her dad, at me. And somehow, despite everything, I felt my chest crack. She was still beautiful, maybe more than ever. And that made it worse. She stood across from me, hands trembling just enough that I noticed. Not the guests, not the officiant, but me. We held hands. The officiant began. I wasn't listening. I was waiting. She read her vows first. Of course she did. I had insisted on it. I said I was nervous and needed time to breathe. She bought that. Maybe she needed to believe it. Her vows were full of all the expected things: devotion, growth, the poetry of us. She even cried once, wiped a tear delicately with the edge of her finger like it had only just occurred to her that love meant loss. People awed. Cameras clicked. She finished. Smiled. My turn. I didn't pull out a card. Didn't need one. I cleared my throat, looked her in the eyes, and said, "June, I've loved you since before I knew what love really meant. You made me believe in building something slow and steady, something that didn't have to burn to feel real. You made me think I was safe." She smiled. The guests smiled. I told myself for months that loving you meant forgiving the things I didn't understand. The late nights, the trips, the silences. There were murmurs now, shifts in posture, heads tilted. I don't want to marry the version of you you've practiced for the world. I wanted the one I met at 2 a.m. eating cereal on the floor of our first apartment. But I don't think she exists anymore. Or maybe she never did. June's face didn't break. She just blinked. Slowly. Her lips parted like she might speak, but I kept going. So today, I'm not going to say I do. Not because I don't love you, but because I finally love myself more than I love the illusion of us. Gasps. A chair creaked as someone stood. The officiant froze. I turned to the guests. "I'm sorry you came all this way. I know you expected a wedding. But this is a funeral. For a future that wasn't built on truth." And then I stepped down from the altar. Walked past stunned faces and half-open mouths. Past Tyler, who looked like he'd seen a ghost. Past her sister, already whispering into her phone, probably updating the group chat before June even left the stage. No one stopped me. Not even her. Back at the parking lot, the wind picked up. I stood by my car for a while, watching petals blow across the gravel like confetti after a war. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt clean. Empty, but clean. Like I'd crawled out of a wreckage and still had my own name. And that, for now, was enough. The morning after was colder than expected. Maybe it was the weather, or maybe it was something else, some psychological frost settling over everything I used to recognize. I woke up in a guest house 30 minutes outside the venue. One of those minimalist places with white walls, no clocks, and an overpriced fruit bowl I didn't touch. There were still flower petals stuck to the soles of my shoes, like memories that hadn't figured out they were supposed to be gone. No text from June. No calls. No missed anything. Just silence. Not angry silence. Not even sad. Just that quiet stretch of air that follows something loud and permanent, like the ringing in your ears after a crash. I checked my phone out of habit. A few messages had trickled in. Tyler, of course, just one line. "Let me know you're alive." Her sister messaged too, with an audacity only someone raised by wolves could have. You could have handled that differently. One guy I barely knew from her side of the guest list sent me a thumbs up and a cryptic respect. That one made me laugh. Briefly, bitterly. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I got in the car and drove. No destination. Just away. Out of town. Past convenience stores and diners and gas stations that still had handwritten signs in the windows. I pulled into the parking lot of a bait and tackle shop with a flickering neon open sign and just sat there. I must have stared at that sign for 15 minutes. Something about it, the buzzing, the way it couldn't decide whether to stay lit or give up, felt too familiar. I wasn't crying. I didn't even feel particularly heartbroken. And that scared me more than anything. Because I should have been wrecked, right? This was supposed to be the lowest point of my life. The fallout, the humiliation, the unbearable emptiness of walking away from what everyone else believed was love. But the truth was, I didn't miss her. I missed the version of me that loved her. That dumb, loyal idiot who stayed up late researching honeymoon packages, who canceled poker nights so we could rewatch trashy crime dramas together, who genuinely thought that planning a wedding meant planning a life. That version of me, the naive one, died somewhere between the rehearsal dinner and the ceremony. Now I was left with whatever this was. A shell with decent posture and a well-rehearsed smile. I thought about all the things people wouldn't ask. No one was going to ask how it felt to hear the woman you loved say she didn't know how to stop being unfaithful. No one would ask how it felt to hear her call your stability a soft trap. No one would ask how it felt to look in the mirror and not recognize the man who spent 6 years slowly becoming background noise in his own relationship. And no one would ask about the apartment. I returned to it that evening. The key turned like nothing had changed, even though everything had. I stepped inside and was met with the smell of lavender and old coffee. Her favorite blanket was still crumpled at the edge of the couch. There was a half-full glass of orange juice on the counter. Hers, not mine. She always poured too much and never finished it. I didn't call out her name. I already knew she wasn't there. She'd left a note, though. One of those short, sickly sweet things written on the back of a grocery list. I'm sorry at the top. You deserved better in the middle. And at the bottom, in handwriting that still somehow made my chest tighten, I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. That was the part that stuck. Didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Like I was bluffing. Like all those months of silence, all those unread signs, all the days I spent walking around with my dignity dragging behind me like a busted shoelace. All of it was a game to her. But I had gone through with it. And now the only thing left to do was figure out who I was without her shadow cast across my walls. That night, I slept in our bed alone. Not because I missed her, but because I wanted to reclaim it. The mattress. The silence. The version of sleep that didn't involve wondering whether her "I love you" was meant for someone else. I stared at the ceiling and let the stillness wrap itself around me. It didn't feel like freedom yet, but it also didn't feel like prison anymore. They always talk about the things people burn after a breakup: love letters, photographs, tickets from the concert where you kissed for the first time. It's this theatrical ritual we're taught to believe is healing. Fire as therapy, destruction as closure. I get it. I do. There's something seductive about watching a memory crumple and curl into ash. But that's not what I did. I kept everything. Not because I couldn't let go, but because I wanted to remember exactly what it cost me to stay as long as I did. I wanted the evidence, the receipts, the emotional wreckage. And maybe, in some quiet, broken part of myself, I wanted to prove that I hadn't imagined it, that there really was something once. A life, a story, a before. So I made a box. Just a plain, beaten-up cardboard box I found behind the dryer. I filled it with everything I couldn't quite throw away. The save-the-date magnets. The handwritten post-it she stuck to my laptop once that said, "You make coffee feel romantic." The seashell from our 3rd anniversary road trip. The ring box. Empty, of course, still faintly smelling of her perfume because she used to keep it in her drawer like it was sacred. I didn't put the dress in. That, she took with her. I also didn't keep the fake vows. I burned those. Not in some dramatic, fire pit in the backyard way. I dropped them into the sink, poured rubbing alcohol on top, and lit them with a match. Watched the words twist and blacken until the paper was soft and wet and ruined. I didn't need to remember those. They weren't real. They weren't even for me. But the rest, the things that hurt more because they were honest, I kept. Not as relics. As reminders. People started messaging me more after the dust settled. It's like they needed time to decide if they were allowed to reach out. Some asked how I was. Some just sent question marks. One guy, her cousin, said I'd humiliated her and that I'd regret it someday. That one almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it told me how far outside the truth everyone still was. No one asked what it felt like to watch someone you love shapeshift into a version of themselves that only exists when you're not looking. No one asked how you keep breathing when you realize you were never really chosen, just convenient. But the one message that stopped me cold came from an unsaved number, late one night. It said, "You knew, didn't you?" No name. No signature. Just that. I stared at it for over an hour. Because yes, I did know. Not just at the end, but long before. Way before the iPad, before the group chat, before the button on her coat. I'd known for months. Years, maybe. In my gut. In that place deep down where truth goes to rot when you're too afraid to speak it out loud. And I still stayed. That's the part one haven't forgiven myself for. A week passed. I got used to the new silence. It was a different kind of quiet now, not sharp or accusing, just heavy. Like a fog that hadn't lifted yet. I didn't see friends. Didn't answer calls. I'd go to the grocery store at odd hours just to avoid people who might ask about the wedding. As if it was just a delayed flight. As if it was ever really going to take off. One night, I found myself sitting on the floor of the living room with the box open, surrounded by pieces of the life I almost lived. And I remembered something she once said in passing, on a Tuesday night, over Chinese takeout. She said, "I don't think anyone ever actually knows they're in the middle of the end until it's already over." She was probably right, but I think some part of us always senses it. We just pretend we don't because the truth requires action, and action requires courage, and courage is expensive when you've invested so much in the lie. I repacked the box, sealed it with duct tape, wrote one word across the top in black Sharpie. Almost. Then I slid it under the bed. Not to forget. To remember. I saw her again exactly 34 days after the wedding that never happened. It was late afternoon, one of those almost spring days when the sun still feels hesitant, like it's asking permission to come back. I was at a bookstore downtown, the kind with crooked shelves and music that plays too softly to recognize. I wasn't looking for anything. Just walking. Just existing. And then she was there. In the biography section. Hair shorter. Jacket unfamiliar. She hadn't seen me yet. She was holding a book she'd never finish, chewing her lip the way she did when she was nervous but pretending not to be. And for a second, just a second, my breath caught. Not because I missed her, but because I didn't. She noticed me eventually. A glance, a freeze, a faint tilt of her head. Then she smiled. Not with her teeth, but with that small upward twitch people use when they know you'll never be the same to them again. I nodded. We didn't hug. She walked over. We stood between shelves of strangers' lives, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small in her presence. I felt whole. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said. "You won't, after this," I replied. Not cruel, just honest. She didn't argue. She looked down at her shoes. "I'm sorry," she said, and this time I believed her. Not because I wanted to. Because I needed to. Not for her, for me. Because carrying the weight of someone else's damage is the fastest way to forget who you were before the impact. "I hope you find whatever it is you were looking for," I told her. "I think I already lost it," she whispered. We stood there in silence for another moment. Then she reached into her bag, pulled out a small envelope, and handed it to me. "I wrote this a while ago," she said. "I didn't know if I'd ever give it to you." I took it. She didn't wait for me to open it. She just turned and walked away. No scene. No tears. Just the soft click of her heels on the wooden floor until the door closed behind her. I didn't open the envelope right away. I waited until I got home. Sat on the edge of my bed. Tore it open like it might bite me. Inside was a short letter, barely a paragraph. "You were the safest place I've ever known." And I broke it because I didn't know how to live in safety without sabotaging it first. That's not your fault. That's mine. I hope you remember the good parts. I will. Even if I don't deserve to. Jay. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't even reread it. I just stood up, walked outside, and let the sun hit my face for the first time in what felt like a year. And for the first time in longer than that, I felt light. Not because the pain was gone, but because I finally understood it, because I survived it, and because I knew, without a single doubt, that I was never going to let someone make me feel like love had to hurt to be real again. It's been 3 months now. I've moved. Smaller apartment, more windows. Started running again. Not to punish myself, just to feel my feet hit the ground. I read more. Laugh easier. I even went on a date. Nothing serious. Just coffee. She asked what happened with my last relationship. I told her. It ended the exact moment I remembered who I was. She smiled. And I smiled too. Because sometimes, the best endings aren't about revenge or regret. They're about returning to yourself. And that's exactly what I did.